The city was already wide awake when Emily stepped out of the tiny two-bedroom apartment she shared with her younger siblings, Ethan and Lily. The street outside buzzed with impatient cars, honking buses, and vendors setting up their stalls. But for Emily, it was just another day. She adjusted the strap of her worn-out shoulder bag, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and whispered to herself, "Buy bread, get Lily's medicine, and maybe, just maybe, a chocolate bar for Ethan, if I have enough change." Emily worked as a bookstore assistant just 3 blocks away. The pay was small, the hours were long, but the scent of old novels and pages gave her a strange comfort. Her boss, Mrs. Jacobs, didn't talk much and barely paid attention to the shop. That suited Emily just fine. She liked her quiet world. On this particular morning, Emily felt light. She had managed to stretch her salary enough to cover rent. Today, she planned to stop at the nearby supermarket on her way to work to buy a few groceries. The sun was already warming the pavement when she arrived at Brightmart Supermarket. Inside, she wandered down the aisles carefully, examining prices, doing silent math in her head. Carton of milk, 2 loaves of bread, toothpaste, a small bar of soap. She walked up to the counter, handed the cashier a crumpled 1,000 naira note, and collected her change. Just as she stepped out, something caught her eye. Lying on the ground near a parked SUV was a black wallet. She paused. The parking lot wasn't crowded. No one seemed to be searching for anything. Emily bent down slowly and picked it up. Felt heavy, real leather. She opened it carefully and gasped. Inside were multiple foreign cards, a Nigerian driver's license, and more cash than she'd seen in months. Dozens of crisp dollar notes. At the very back, tucked into a slim pocket, were several business cards. One name appeared over and over. Jake Anderson, founder and CEO, Anderson Global Real Estate. Emily blinked. That name. She had seen it on a billboard just last week. An ad for luxury homes in Lekki Phase 1. She stared at the money again. A single dollar note could cover Ethan's school lunch for days. One card swipe could fix the leak in the roof. No one had seen her pick it up. No cameras. No witnesses. Her hands shook slightly, but her mind was steady. She turned around and walked right back into the supermarket. The cashier, a young woman named Anna, looked up. "Hi," Emily said softly, holding out the wallet. "I found this just outside, near the SUV parked in front." Anna's eyes widened. She took the wallet, opened it, and nearly gasped. "You're returning this?" Emily nodded. "Wow, you're amazing," Anna said. "Most people would have." "I'm not most people," Emily replied, her voice calm but firm. Anna called for the security officer, Mr. Harris, a tall, serious-looking man in a navy blue uniform. He took the wallet, checked the contents, and locked it safely inside a drawer behind the desk. "I'll make sure it gets back to the owner," he said. "Thank you, Miss." "Emily," she replied. "Just Emily." She turned and walked out, her bag of groceries swaying gently with each step. She didn't know she had just walked out of one world and stepped into another. Across town, moments earlier, Jake Anderson was having a rare kind of day. No private drivers, no assistants, no suits, just a plain green t-shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. After spending 10 years expanding his company between Lagos and New York, Jake had returned home for a break. A quiet 2-month stay. No boardroom meetings, no charity galas, just peace. He had stopped at Brightmart to buy snacks, toothpaste, and bottled water before heading out to inspect one of his undeveloped properties. He left the store, climbed into his SUV, took a long sip from the water bottle, and drove off. It wasn't until he stopped at the next filling station that he realized his wallet was gone. He froze, checked his back pocket, checked his side pockets, glove compartment, under the seat, the floor mat, nothing. His chest tightened. Inside that wallet was his U.S. driver's license, international ID, 3 credit cards, thousands of dollars, and sensitive business cards with private contact information. "Please God," he muttered, starting the car again. "Let it still be there." Back at Brightmart minutes later, Jake marched into the supermarket with urgency, his voice low but firm. "Excuse me," he said to the cashier. "I think I lost my wallet here earlier. Has anyone seen it?" Anna blinked. "You're Jake Anderson?" Jake paused. "Yes," she smiled. "A woman found it just after you left. She gave it to me." Jake's breath caught in his throat. "Is it still here?" Mr. Harris walked over, opened the drawer, and handed the wallet to Jake. "Check to confirm, sir." Jake opened it slowly. His hands moved quickly across the compartments. Everything was there. Every card, every bill, every single detail. "She didn't take anything?" he asked, stunned. "Not even a note," Anna said, smiling. "She didn't leave her number either." Jake stood still for a moment. "What's her name?" he asked quietly. "Emily," Anna said. That's all she told us. Jake reached into the wallet, pulled out a few notes, and handed some to both Anna and Mr. Harris. Thank you, he said. Please, if she ever comes back, give her this. He scribbled his number on the back of a receipt and passed it to Anna. Tell her I'd like to say thank you, personally. Anna nodded. As Jake walked back to his SUV, he scanned the lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious woman who had just returned his wallet. But she was gone. That night, Emily lay on the mattress beside Lily, who had fallen asleep clutching a worn-out teddy bear. The light bulb in the ceiling flickered softly. Emily stared at the peeling ceiling. Her mind drifted to the wallet, to the money she had let go, to the name Jake Anderson. She smiled faintly and whispered, if he needed it back, then he must need it more than I do. Across town, Jake sat in his penthouse, the wallet still in his hand. He whispered, she didn't take a thing, not even a coin. Who are you, Emily? He didn't know it yet, but fate was already preparing the answer. 3 weeks passed. Not a day went by that Jake Anderson didn't think about the girl named Emily. He carried the wallet everywhere now. Not because he was afraid of losing it again, but because every time he saw it, he remembered her. The girl who returned it, untouched. The girl who vanished before he could even say, thank you. He had never met someone like her, and he wasn't sure he ever would again. Meanwhile, on the other side of Lagos, Emily stood at the pharmacy counter, her fingers tightly gripping a crumpled prescription paper. Her little sister, Lily, had been coughing through the night again. The same dry, wheezing cough that always showed up during the rainy season. The pharmacist looked up. The syrup and tablets come to 2,500. Emily blinked. She had 2,000. No more. She paused, glanced at Lily, then quietly said, please remove the tablets. I'll come back for them next week. The pharmacist gave her a pitying look and nodded. As they walked out into the misty morning, Lily clutched her sister's hand and asked, Emily, why don't you just ask for help? Emily gave a tired smile. Because people like us don't ask. We survive. The next morning, while Emily prepared to head to work at the bookstore, their neighbor knocked on the door. She was a cheerful woman in her 40s who worked as a volunteer at community events. Emily, she said, there's a big outreach happening at the government park today. Free food, school supplies, even doctors for checkups. Emily raised an eyebrow. For real? She asked. Very real, the woman replied. Sponsored by one of those big companies. I think Anderson something. Emily's heart skipped. Anderson? Could it be him? She didn't want to assume, but something tugged at her chest. She looked down at Lily and Ethan, her little brother who had just finished sweeping the compound. Get dressed, she said. We're going. The park government secretariat grounds. It was a colorful scene. Tents, chairs, banners, and smiling volunteers. Children danced as music played softly through loudspeakers. Mothers stood in lines holding food vouchers. Men received free medical checkups under a canopy with plastic chairs. Emily, Lily, and Ethan quietly joined the line for provisions. As she collected a small bag of rice and a carton of milk, Emily noticed a familiar face by the juice station. Anna, the cashier from the supermarket. Anna was wearing a volunteer apron, stacking bottled water on a table. She looked up, spotted Emily, and her face lit up instantly. Oh my God, Anna whispered. It's you. Emily blinked. Hi, you're the girl who returned the wallet, Anna exclaimed. Emily chuckled softly. I wasn't expecting to see you here. Anna leaned closer, her voice lowering. He's here. Emily's smile faded. Who? Jake, Anna whispered. The man you helped. The billionaire. This is his event. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly and scanned the crowd. Nothing. Then Anna pointed to a black SUV parked under a large tree at the far end of the field. He's sitting in that car, waiting. He asked us to keep an eye out for you. Emily's legs went cold. No, please, she said quickly. Don't tell him. I just came to get supplies. But Anna had already turned and was walking toward the SUV with a hopeful smile. Emily stood frozen. Her heart raced. Her palms were damp. She glanced down at her faded blouse, the frayed edges of her jeans. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. But she didn't move. The car door opened. And then he stepped out. Jake Anderson. Real, tall, calm. His eyes scanned the field as Anna pointed. Then his gaze locked on her. Emily couldn't breathe. He began walking. Slowly, purposefully. Her instinct screamed, run, but her feet said, stay. Within seconds, he stood before her. The first real conversation. Hi, Jake said softly. Hi, Emily replied, barely above a whisper. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Jake smiled. I finally get to thank you. Emily looked down. It wasn't a big deal. Jake tilted his head. You returned a wallet full of cash and international IDs. And you call that not a big deal? She shrugged. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, he said. That's why you deserve one. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small brown envelope. Use this for yourself. Or your siblings. Emily hesitated. I didn't ask for this. Jake nodded. Which is exactly why I'm giving it to you. She slowly took the envelope and held it to her chest. Thank you, she said. Jake smiled. You didn't leave a number. You just disappeared. I didn't think you'd notice. I noticed everything, Jake replied. Your kindness. Your silence. Your honesty. They both stood there for a long second. Two people from two different worlds, connected by one selfless act. Finally, Jake took out his phone and held it toward her. Please. Your number. Emily nodded and carefully typed it in. Jake gave her a missed call immediately. Now you have mine, he said. Call me anytime. Emily smiled. Okay. The bus ride home. As they walked away from the event with their small bag of food, Ethan and Lily laughed and skipped ahead. Emily stayed quiet, her fingers wrapped around the envelope in her bag. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm really glad you came today, Jake. She smiled. But just as she opened the message again, the bus to their neighborhood arrived. She climbed in with her siblings, found a seat in the back, and placed her phone gently on her lap. She reached into her bag to pull out change for the bus fare. In that moment, rushed, crowded, distracted, she forgot to pick her phone back up. As the conductor shouted, "Last stop, Oya, come down." She grabbed her bag, lifted the pack of rice, and stepped off the bus. The door slammed shut behind her, and her phone was gone. The rain came hard that afternoon. Thick droplets pounded the rusted zinc roof of Jacob's books and stationery, drumming a rhythm that soaked through the city. Inside the bookstore, Emily stood by the front desk, a rag in one hand, her eyes on the street outside. She sighed. She had no umbrella, and her worn sneakers were already damp from the morning's puddles. Behind her, wooden shelves stood neatly arranged, rows of dusty novels, school textbooks, poetry collections, and second-hand encyclopedias. The air smelled like old paper and forgotten dreams. Mrs. Jacobs, the bookstore's owner, sat in the corner with a wool shawl wrapped around her shoulders, half asleep behind her round glasses. Emily glanced down at her phone, then remembered. It was gone. 3 days had passed since the outreach. She had ridden the bus home that day without realizing her phone had slipped off her lap. By the time she remembered, it was too late. She had no backup contact for Jake. No way to reach him. Just silence. She told herself it was okay. That maybe it wasn't meant to continue. That he would forget. People like him didn't chase after girls like her. Still, a small ache lingered behind her smile. Meanwhile, across town, Jake Anderson sat in the back seat of his SUV, parked near a half-completed building site. But he wasn't focused on the project update. He stared down at his phone screen, her contact still saved. He had texted her 4 times. I hope you got home safe. Let's meet up soon. I owe you more than a thank you. Are you free this weekend? Just checking in. Are you okay? Each one remained unread. Each one a quiet wound. He leaned back against the seat. Was I wrong about her? He wondered. But something in his gut said no. She wasn't the type to ghost someone. She was the type to return a full wallet and walk away quietly. If she wasn't responding, something had happened. The next day, a quiet visit. Jake rarely went anywhere alone. But this time he wanted no driver, no staff. He remembered what the cashier, Anna, had told him during the outreach. She said she works at a bookstore near the main junction. Jacobs, I think. He drove himself through light traffic, took a right turn near the market, and spotted a narrow storefront painted dull green. The signboard was faint and peeling. Jacobs Books and Stationery. His heart thudded a little. He parked, stepped out, adjusted his baseball cap, and walked in. The smell of old paper hit him first. Then the stillness. Then her. She was bent over a shelf, stacking small notebooks with practiced ease. Her hair was tied in a messy bun. She wore a faded gray sweater and jeans with fraying knees. She looked up and froze. Their eyes met. Time paused. Jake? She whispered. He smiled. Hey, he said gently. Been trying to reach you. Emily blinked, stunned. I lost my phone. I didn't mean to ignore you. Jake took a slow step forward. I figured something like that happened. Mrs. Jacobs peeked over her glasses and muttered. You know this young man, Emily? Emily nodded slowly. Yes. He's a friend. Mrs. Jacobs returned to her crossword. Jake turned back to Emily. Do you have a few minutes? He asked. I brought something. Emily looked toward the door, unsure. Jake raised a hand, smiling. It's not a car. Just coffee. Moments later at the cafe next door, They sat by the window of a small roadside cafe, 2 mugs of hot cocoa between them. Rain tapped softly on the glass. "So," Jake said, breaking the silence, "you're full of surprises." Emily tilted her head. "Me? You work in a bookstore. You don't take what doesn't belong to you, and you vanish without saying goodbye." She laughed gently. "I didn't vanish. Life just got in the way." Jake looked at her carefully. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Why'd you return the wallet?" She sipped her cocoa before answering. "Because I know what it's like to lose something you can't replace." Jake watched her, not interrupting. "I lost my parents when I was 12, she continued. "In a bus crash. They were coming back from the village. Never made it home." Jake's face softened. "I was left with my younger siblings," Emily said. "I had to grow up fast. I started selling bread, then books. I've learned that sometimes the right thing isn't always easy, but it's still the right thing." Jake nodded slowly. "Your strength? It humbles me." Emily raised an eyebrow, amused. "You? Humbled?" Jake chuckled. "Believe it or not, yes." Then, after a quiet pause, he leaned forward. "Can I tell you something crazy?" Emily smirked. "I'm listening." "The story of the rain." Jake's voice softened. "Years ago, when I was 16, I was hit by a car." Emily's eyes widened. "It was near Makoko. I had taken a walk after arguing with my father. It started raining. I didn't see the car coming." She leaned in. "I remember everything going black. But then, there was a voice. A girl. She stayed with me while I bled on the road. She didn't run. She held my hand, begged me to stay awake, and called for help." He paused. "I never saw her face clearly. The rain, the pain, everything blurred. But I remember her voice." Emily's heart started pounding. She kept saying, "Hold on. You're not going to die today." I never found her again. But I never forgot her. Her breath caught. Jake looked into her eyes. "Your voice," he said slowly. "It sounded familiar. The first day we spoke. But today, I'm sure." Emily covered her mouth with her hand. She was trembling. "I was 15, she whispered. "I had just closed from selling bread near the junction. I saw you lying in the road. I remember the blood. Your shoe had fallen off." Jake's eyes widened. "Yes, my left shoe. You said something," she continued, "about your mom. You said, 'Tell her I'm sorry.'" Jake leaned back in his chair, stunned. "It was you," he said, his voice shaking. Emily nodded. "I never thought I'd see you again," she whispered. Silence settled over the table. And then, Jake reached across the table and took her hand. "Emily, you saved my life once, and you didn't even know it." Tears welled up in her eyes. Jake's voice cracked. "And now, somehow, you found me again. What are the chances?" Emily gave a tearful laugh. "Maybe the universe doesn't forget kindness." Jake smiled. "No, it just waits for the right moment to reward it." They sat there, hands gently locked, cocoa slowly cooling between them. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside, something new had begun. Something real. Something rare. The next few days passed in a strange kind of quiet joy. Jake had never felt this way before. Not even with the wealthy, polished women who used to orbit his world. None of them had ever seen him the way Emily did. Not as a billionaire. Not as a brand. But as a boy in the rain. The more they talked, the more he realized. He didn't want her to disappear again. And yet, something about Emily made him hesitant. She didn't chase. She didn't ask. She never demanded more. She had already saved him once, both in the past and now again in the present. And all she had ever done was quietly walk away. One morning at the bookstore, Emily stood at the front counter of Jacob's Books and Stationery, stacking freshly delivered textbooks. Jake leaned casually against the doorway, holding 2 iced coffee cups. "Peace offering," he said, walking in. "Since I forgot to call you last night." Emily smiled and took the cup. "Thanks, but I forgive you. This time." Jake looked around the small shop. "This place smells like my childhood," he said softly. Emily raised an eyebrow. "You grew up around books?" Jake nodded. "My mother used to read to me before bed. Then, when she passed, I started reading to myself. Stories were how I stayed sane." Emily's smile faded gently. "I'm sorry." Jake paused, then looked at her. "Do you know what my favorite book was?" "What?" He reached into his satchel and pulled out an old, wrinkled copy of The Little Prince. Emily's eyes widened. "No way," she said. "That's my favorite too." Jake smiled. "Now you're scaring me." They laughed. Then, something changed in the air. A shift in conversation. Jake sat on a stool beside the checkout desk, the book in his hand. "Can I ask you something strange?" he said, almost nervously. Emily looked at him. "Of course. Why haven't you ever asked about all this?" He gestured vaguely, his car, his status, the fact that he was Jake Anderson. Emily blinked. What do you mean? I mean, Jake said. Most people I meet want to know how I made my first million, or what car I drive, or what the press said about me last week. Emily thought for a second. Then she said, That's not the version of you I met. Jake tilted his head. I met the version who lost a wallet, and the version who almost died in the rain. That's the Jake I know. He didn't reply. He just stared at her, silently stunned. Later that day, Jake's office. Jake sat behind his desk, still holding The Little Prince. He stared at the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. For the first time in years, his chest felt tight in a different way. Not from stress or anxiety, but from something deeper, guilt. Emily had seen him at his lowest. She had held his hand when he bled on the pavement. She had returned his wallet without taking a thing. But what had he ever done for her? Yes, he'd given her an envelope, some cash, sponsored her siblings' school fees. But those were surface gestures. What had he really given her? He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. Sandra, he said, get me everything you can find on Jacob's bookstore. And on Emily Thomas. Sir? She asked, surprised. Nothing invasive, he said. I just want to know if she's ever had help. From anyone. Okay. Anything else? Jake paused. Find out if the building she lives in has any unpaid rent notices. Quietly. The truth about Emily. That evening, Jake sat in his living room, reading a printed document. It detailed Emily's background, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. But painful. Parents lost in a bus crash. No known family connections. Dropped out of secondary school to raise siblings. Worked odd jobs for years. Took a job at Jacob's Books at age 19. Never took a loan. No record of financial support. Jake folded the document slowly. His chest ached. He had once thought he was the one offering Emily a better life. But she had lived with pain he'd never imagined. She had sacrificed herself so that Lily and Ethan could live. And yet, through it all, she had kept her heart soft. He picked up his phone. No messages from her. But somehow that made sense. Emily wasn't waiting for him to chase her. She was simply living. The gift. 2 days later, Jake pulled up outside the bookstore. Emily was surprised to see him, but smiled warmly. I have something for you, he said. Is it another coffee? She asked. Nope. Something better. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a carefully wrapped box. Emily hesitated before opening it. Inside was a first edition copy of The Little Prince. Original print. Hardcover. Wrapped in tissue paper. Her hands trembled. Jake. This must have cost a fortune. I don't care, he said. It's yours. She looked at him. Why are you doing this? Jake stepped closer. Because you once gave me something I can't ever repay. My life. And now, I just want to give you things that bring you joy. Tears welled in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. No one's ever done something like this for me. Jake smiled. Then I guess it's about time someone did. The final page. That night, Emily sat on her tiny mattress, the book on her lap. Lily and Ethan were asleep, the house silent. She opened to the first page. A note was written inside. To the girl who saved me, and kept saving me, your kindness didn't go unnoticed. Your silence didn't go unheard. Jake. Emily closed her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. It had been 2 weeks since Jake gave Emily the first edition book. In that time, they'd shared more than just coffee or stories. They had shared quiet walks, long silences, small laughter, and moments that didn't need explanation. They were getting to know each other not just in conversation, but in the spaces in between. Yet, beneath it all, Emily still held back a part of herself. She smiled. She laughed. She cared. But she never leaned in completely. Jake noticed. And one Sunday afternoon, he decided to change that. An invitation. Emily was restocking travel novels in the store when her phone buzzed. Jake, please dress nicely. I'm picking you up at 4 p.m. sharp. She smiled, typed, where are we going? His reply came quickly. Somewhere special. No clues. By 4 p.m., she stood outside the bookstore in a long navy blue dress that Lily had ironed with care. Jake arrived in a clean black sedan. No driver, no suit. Just him, simple and smiling. He opened the door for her and said, you look like a poem. Emily blushed and got in. The surprise. They drove quietly for nearly an hour. Out of the city. Past the traffic. Past the noise. Into peace. Finally, they turned onto a paved private road surrounded by trees. The sun filtered through the leaves like melted gold. At the end of the path stood a house. Not just a house, a dream. Painted white with blue shutters. A small garden out front. A wooden porch. Wind chimes. Emily blinked in surprise. "What is this?" Jake parked, stepped out, and opened her door. "This," he said, "is your future." She froze. "What?" He walked her toward the house. "I started building it the week after I met you. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew." He turned to face her. "I don't want to lose you again, Emily." Tears welled in her eyes. Jake reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. He knelt, not in front of reporters, not in a ballroom, but on the porch of the house he built for her. "Emily Thomas," he said, his voice steady, "you once held my hand when I was bleeding in the street, and again, when I didn't even know I was lost. You saw me as a human before you saw me as anything else. You saved my life, not once, but twice. Will you spend the rest of it with me?" Emily was shaking. She stared at him at the box at the house. Then she whispered, "You know I don't have anything to offer, right?" Jake smiled. "You offered me everything I'd been searching for, and you gave it without asking for a single thing back." She dropped to her knees in front of him and hugged him tight. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Jake. 1,000 times yes." 1 month later, the opening speech. A banner stretched across the white arch of the new school hall. Anderson Literacy Foundation. For every child with a story. Jake stood at the podium, dressed in a simple gray suit. Emily stood beside him, her hand holding his gently. Cameras flashed. Guests murmured. Jake raised a hand, and the room quieted. "Today," he said, "we open this building as a place of hope, for kids who grew up like I did, alone, searching for purpose. But this isn't about me." He turned slightly and looked at Emily. "This is about a girl who didn't know her worth, and gave everything anyway. A girl who saved me with nothing more than courage." He smiled. "Emily." The crowd clapped. She blushed and lowered her head. Jake took her hand again. "And to anyone out there wondering if goodness still exists, let me say this. I'm standing here today because someone decided to be kind without expecting anything in return. She didn't know she was saving a life, but she did." Final scene, the bench in the garden. That evening, the sun dipped low behind the trees. Emily sat on the wooden bench outside the house, a mug of tea in her hands. Jake joined her, wrapping a blanket over both their shoulders. Ethan and Lily played quietly nearby, drawing chalk flowers on the pavement. Emily leaned her head on Jake's shoulder. "You still think fate brought us together?" she asked. Jake smiled. "No," he whispered. "I think love did." They sat there until the stars came out. No noise, no headlines, no rush, just a boy who was once bleeding in the rain, and the girl who stayed,